Okay, welcome everybody. It is about 1:20 here on Thursday, July 9th. Welcome to the latest TWIG meeting. I have done a quick survey. It looks like I do have a quorum, so we can go ahead and get started. We do have for the agenda item number 2, we need to approve our minutes from our last meeting on June 11th. So I would like to go ahead and ask for a motion to approve. And I do have, we've got a little bit of a different methodology than we have done in the past relative to the opportunity to hand raise. If you do have a camera and would like to initiate your camera mode when you speak, that would be fine. If you're more comfortable leaving it off, that's fine as well. So I will be looking for hands raised. If I could get a motion to approve the June 11th minutes, that would be great.
Chair, we're gonna need to have them unmute their mic instead of raising their hand to make the motion.
Okay.
Sorry.
No worries here. So I, as Seth just indicated, if you could unmute and let me know what the motion is here.
Motion to approve, Martin Reeder, National City.
And do I have a second on that?
Second, Megan Openshaw, City of Imperial Beach.
Okay, can I, this is where we're going to do the roll call from what I understand, and Seth is going to serve as our clerk. So can I get a roll call, Seth?
Absolutely, and I'm just going to go through the names as I see them appear here. It's not going to be in order of the city, and I'll just ask the representative to unmute themselves and make their vote. City of Imperial Beach, Megan Openshaw.
Aye.
City of San Diego, Laura Black.
Aye.
City of Carlsbad, Don New.
Yes.
County of San Diego, Felix Aponte Gonzalez. We didn't hear anything from you, Felix. Sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Aye. Yeah.
Okay. Jeff Hunt, City of Oceanside.
Yes.
Jesse Brown, City of Coronado.
Yes.
John Conley, City of Vista.
Aye.
Joseph Smith, City of Encinitas.
Joseph with Delmar and I.
Delmar, sorry about that. Was that a yes vote, Joseph? I didn't hear you.
Yes.
Thank you. Martin Reeder, City of National City.
Aye.
And Roy Sapau, City of Encinitas. Sorry, Roy, we didn't hear you.
Yes.
Thank you. And Tiffany Allen, City of Chula Vista.
Since I was not a participant at that meeting, I don't think I can vote.
You have the ability to vote on the minutes if you want, but you can also abstain. It'll be fine.
Then I'll abstain, thank you.
Okay. The vote passes unanimously with 1 abstention.
Seth, I don't recall that you called my name, so if I could just have for the record that my vote is yes.
Apologize for that, Chair Brindley.
No problem. Okay, motion passes. So we're on to agenda item number 3, which is an opportunity for public comments and or communications or member comments. Seth, do we have any public comments on today's agenda?
We do not have any public comments. This is an opportunity for the attendees who are not TWIG members to raise their hand if they would like to make a public comment at this point in time.
Okay.
I see that Carrie Kusiak has a hand raised.
Okay, can we unmute Carrie?
I just wanted to take the opportunity, Seth, to point out that you did not call me out for the on the roll call, but I am here and present.
All right, apologize for that, Carrie. We're going to move you over to an attendee as a TWIG, and we'll make sure we don't miss you again. So if the production team can move Carrie Kuziak over, that'd be great.
And if I could also ask the production team to move Kathleen Keenan. And it looks like Joseph Lim is still in the attendees.
Yes, Chair, I did speak with Joseph. He's only logging in on a cell phone, so I instructed him to raise his hand, and I'll let you know he's making a comment.
Thank you. And can you also please move over Michael Coyne? Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. Looks like I need to toggle back over to the staff section. So, okay, we're through the public comments section. I didn't see any other raised hands from the individuals on that list. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Seth Lichney from Sandag to provide us with some information on the Sandag Regional Housing Incentive Program. Seth, you're up.
Thank you so much, Chair. Definitely appreciate it. If we can bring up my presentation. And good afternoon, everyone. All right, so I wanted to take an opportunity to let the TWIG members know about the housing incentive program that Sandag is going to be working on. And this is something that goes all the way back to probably September of 2018. The board of directors, when it formed the RENA subcommittee, also made a request of Sandag staff that we work on an incentive program that would allow for Sandag to support our member agencies in the completion of RENA and increasing housing throughout the region. So this was something we had been working on prior to some of the state funding that's become available, but we certainly think the state funding gives us an opportunity to create a very robust program that I think I'm going to get into some of the details today. So if we can go to the next slide. So we'll be funding at least the initial portion of the housing incentive program with our regional early action planning funds. Many of you are aware of the local early action planning funds that were established by AB 101 by the state of California last year. It created local funds and regional funds to address the housing crisis. And so REAP, just in a basic overview, is a funding program that's operated by the Department of Housing and Community Development. And the idea is to allow councils of governments to collaborate on projects that have broader regional impact on housing. I take that to mean working with our local jurisdictions on speeding up housing development. We're also intended to facilitate local housing production and assist local governments in meeting their regional housing needs allocation. And I think that gets back to the comment I just made about the board wanting to have a program that does this, and lo and behold, the state of California was willing to fund it. Next slide. So speaking of funding, the Sandag REAP allocation is a formula-based allocation from the state of California based on population. Sandag will receive just over $6.8 million total for the program. There was some legislation that allowed us to apply for an initial 25% of those funds this year, and we have submitted the application for $1.7 million. We have a signed grant agreement with HCD, and we are literally waiting for the money to arrive in the mail so that we can get started on this process in earnest. HCD has said that after having a signed agreement, it might take about 30 days before we actually get the funds in hand. So we signed the agreement in late June, so I would expect us to have the $1.7 million this month. What we'll be able to do if we make progress on our housing incentive program is apply for an additional $5.1 million next year. and there are some funding spending requirements. Although these have been, some of these have been moved around by legislation that was just recently approved at the end of last month. So initially the funding had to be spent by 2023. That date might have moved. So I might need to update this slide. Next slide, please. So in our initial application for the $1.7 million, we outlined an approach for our to spend our REAP money and how we want to set up a regional housing incentive program. And I've got the steps outlined here that we included in our application. So the first thing we want to do, and this could be happening very soon as we get the funding, is to start working on a needs assessment. And that's going to involve talking with local jurisdictions, with housing stakeholders like the San Diego Housing Federation, the Building Industry Association, and other stakeholders about what are the needs for the region. I think as it pertains to local government, what kind of technical assistance could you use as you're thinking about ways to increase housing development and implement your RHNA allocation? We want to be able to provide policy and information sharing, best practices, and we also want to talk about what are some of those housing roadblocks that you face, that you see as a potential, as something that potentially has a solution that we can approach in this program. And what that'll lead to is the second item in this list, and that's defining SANDAG's role. This is a new role for us. As you probably know, we have, SANDAG has a board policy 33, but that really only affects the scoring for the Smart Growth Incentive Program. It's not, other than SANDAG's role in trying to promote housing through that board policy, we don't really have a well-defined role in what SANDAG is supposed to do in this realm, and that's something we want to get from the needs assessment. From there, we'll be able to develop a regional housing policy, and that could be something that is included in the update to the regional plan. And I think that housing policy is going to be important. It'll say how SANDAG plans to basically implement a housing incentive program. It'll talk about priorities that SANDAG will have, and it'll talk about some other places where we can influence housing policy in the region. Now, I imagine there will be a lot of discussion about a housing policy. It would need to be approved by the board of directors, probably in the regional plan as we move forward with it. But I think there's a real opportunity here for SANDAG to answer that question and put it in an official policy document about our role in housing production throughout the region. Next slide, please. So the fourth part, and this is really the big ticket item for our incentive for our REAP program, is the Regional Housing Incentive Program. And we envision this being pass-through funds for local governments. Out of the $6.8 million that we receive, I imagine a large majority of this will be these pass-through funds. But we want to make it a program that is furthering the goals of the organization and of the region. And we also have some requirements that we need to meet as part of the REAP program as well. So essentially, REAP, the idea is for us to be funding planning activities to streamline housing development. And for each of you, that's going to mean something different. Places like the city of San Diego have quite a few housing streamlining and incentive programs in place right now. Other places may not have as many. So it could be an opportunity for us to fund some additional measures that your jurisdiction might want to take, but may not have some funding to happen. We want this to tie into the regional plan update. And if you've heard about the 5 big moves and some of the plans that we have for the regional plan, we think this is a great opportunity to have some incentive funding so that some of the goals and policies in the regional plan can be made to fruition as well. And we also want to include performance metrics. And again, there's plenty of discussion about what that'll mean. To me, we're looking at streamlining housing development. We're looking at increasing housing development. It would be great to see those numbers on your annual housing element progress reports starting to tick up. And that could be a very basic performance measure, but I'm sure we'll have a discussion about other measures that we can include in this as well. So the interesting thing about the Regional Housing Incentive Program will be a discussion about how it relates to other SANDAG grant programs. We do have a desire for this program, for the Housing Incentive Program, to be funded permanently. The $6.8 million we'll get from the state is really kind of seed funding, but we'll be looking at other sources of funds that could potentially go into this program and make it a long-term grant program for Sandag. And we'll need to determine how it fits in with our other grant programs that we've offered in the past. So things that are funded by Transnet, like the Smart Growth Incentive Program. How does it tie into the Regional Housing Incentive Program? We want to make sure that we're setting up a system where jurisdictions that are taking advantage of these funds can also take advantage of some of the Smart Growth Incentive Program and Active Transportation Grant Program funds that we have available. So it'll be a discussion about how we align the priorities for these incentive programs in a way that makes sense. Next slide. One of the other key points that we want to include in our as part of our REAP program is to start talking about a funding clearinghouse. And this is, again, a discussion that's gone on for quite some time about how our region can become more competitive for state funding programs. Most notably, the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Grant Program that is run by the Strategic Growth Council. I'm not sure if all of the TWIG members have heard, there was a recent announcement at the end of June about the funding for this cycle. We had 5 applications that were submitted by 3 different jurisdictions in our region, and all 5 of the applications were denied funding. So we think there's an opportunity here for us to start working on some of the partnerships and some of the other key components that are needed for projects in our region to start competing better for some of these grant programs. And I imagine a funding clearinghouse as being a place where we have information about grant programs over multiple years. We potentially have information about housing developers. So for example, the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Grant Program really requires a housing component and a transportation component to the application. So how can we identify places where there could be a potential for an affordable housing development that also ties to a transportation project, whether that's a local project or a Sandag project, an MTS project, or an NCTD project. We want to have something that's a little bit more organized rather than folks coming together with a couple of months prior to the application period and cobbling together a partnership that may or may not be the best approach for the region. So we really want to take these funds and make sure that it's something that leverages the funding that we can get from the state of California. Next slide, please. So there's a lot of coordination that I think we need to be considering as we're moving forward with this. And keep in mind, everything that I've laid out was what we put in an application. Decisions have not been made about how exactly any of the components of these 5 issues are going to be actually going to be handled or addressed. We certainly want to start with the needs assessment, and that's going to tell us a lot about the direction that we should start taking. So we want to make sure we get that feedback before these programs really get defined and the housing policy gets drafted and things like that. We want it to be something where we're hearing from our member organizations and our other stakeholders. But we also need to make sure we're in coordination with a lot of the other housing programs and policies that are coming forward. In particular, the Department of Housing and Community Development has funding to do what they're calling regional technical assistance. And so that kind of ties back to the needs assessment, where we talk about what are the jurisdiction's needs. What are some things that could be put together that say, if you need assistance with your zoning code, what are some ideas of zoning code changes that could be made? If you need assistance on ADU policies or other approaches like that. Transit-oriented development or mixed-use zoning code requirements, those kind of things. We want to make sure that we're working together with HCD on its regional technical assistance while also working on technical assistance as part of our REAP application. So what you'll end up seeing is a joint effort when we do our outreach. HCD will have some similar questions that we have, but we want to make sure that we're having this discussion together and not necessarily kind of coming back to you multiple times asking, what do you need? What would be the best thing for your city? And so I've been in coordination with HCD and some of the consultant team that they've hired to make sure that we have a coordinated effort in this matter. We also want to find out about your LEAP applications. Hopefully you all saw the legislation that was approved at the end of last month, just before the LEAP deadline. I think it was the day before the LEAP deadline. The governor signed it, but you do have an extension on your applications for LEAP. And even if you've already submitted an application, HCD is allowing your jurisdiction to make modifications to that application if there was something you were considering doing, but just didn't have time to get it included in your application. So we want to make sure we're coordinating with your jurisdictions. What are you applying for LEAP? How can we leverage that money? How can it work in coordination with our housing incentive program? Again, we need to find out kind of what's the best approach for Sandag to take, but we need to know where your jurisdictions are on all of these on these kind of programs. And then other things like the SB2 permanent local housing allocation and the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities grant program. Those are going to be yearly allocations of funds or grant applications that can be acquired by your jurisdictions. Again, so we want to be coordinated with your efforts for both of those programs as well. And then there's even other housing grant programs that should be under consideration. HCD has a transit-oriented development grant that actually its applications are available right now for funding under that program. The infill infrastructure grant received a big influx of money a few years ago, and it might be something that HCD continues to fund into the future. Again, there's so much going on right now related to housing funding that we really want to make sure that we're that we are getting kind of our hands around what's the efforts that are being made locally and how does that tie into Sandag's regional program. So I think there's a lot of work to be done in this for us to get moving on this. As I mentioned, we have the opportunity to apply for additional funds in 2021. But we need to make some progress on the initial funds that we're receiving this year. So we do want to get started with that initial needs assessment and outreach to your jurisdictions as soon as possible. And I'm sure we'll have other opportunities probably in the fall where we talk with your organizations and with the TWIG about how some of these incentive programs and policies can really be crafted and formulated in a way that meets these goals. I think that's my last slide on the REAP funding. If we go to the next slide, I did want to mention the housing element due date information. As I think I sent out to everyone, to the TWIG members last month, we sent a joint letter along with our counterparts with the Southern California Association of Governments, that's the LA Region Council of Governments, and the Sacramento Area Council of Governments. We sent a joint letter to the Assembly, to the head of the Assembly and the head of the State Senate, requesting a 6-month delay in housing element due dates. Essentially, we put forward the argument that COVID-19 has really put a strain on jurisdictions' abilities to update their housing element by that required date, and that a 6-month delay would be something that could assist in making sure that your housing elements, that first of all, that your jurisdictions have the ability to do adequate outreach to your communities, and that you have staffing and enough resources in place to meet all the new requirements that are in state law for housing elements. And I'm sure those of you who have gotten started on your housing elements are seeing there's quite a bit of information that needs to be gathered and a lot that needs to be done in order to get your housing element going. So Sandag, SCAG, and SACOG have been having discussions initial discussions with legislative staff and with HCD. We'll be approaching the governor's office in the next few weeks and really trying to make the case for why this 6-month delay is important and why it's needed. So right now that's pretty much where we stand on the discussions with the state of California. Some of the feedback that we've received initially, they're curious to know, the legislative staff and HCD staff, about some of the issues that your local jurisdictions are facing. And one thing that'll be important for us to find out and important for us to convey to the state is that your planning department budgets may be under some serious stress in this next fiscal year. And so if you're hearing, or if your department is facing layoffs or budget cuts, that's something that would be incredibly helpful for us to know. So if you want to share that information, please let me know by email. If we'll open it up for discussion with the TWIG members after I'm done with this presentation. But it is something that the state has been curious to know. We're also curious about other specific challenges that you may be facing. We're hearing about the digital divide, and part of the concern with doing public outreach for your housing element involves making sure that segments of the community that may not have access to a computer on a regular basis can still participate in the development of a housing element. We've heard some anecdotal evidence from cities that are very concerned about this. If we have some more information from your jurisdictions, that would be something that would be helpful. And if there's examples of what your jurisdictions are doing to overcome some of these challenges, I know the outreach is difficult. Maybe you've had a breakthrough, or maybe you found a way to reach more people, or had good participation in some of your meetings. Those are the kind of things that would be, if we have examples of that, we want to let the state know that the local governments are making efforts. It's just, this is a very difficult time, and this is a very difficult ask of the state of California for our jurisdictions to get this done by April of 2021. Additional things to consider with the 6-month delay are things like tribal outreach. We've heard from some of our other organizations that can be an issue as well. That'll add a certain amount of time that needs to be provided to do your tribal outreach, which is required by state law, and then any other local concerns that you're hearing about. The more information that you can get us, the more that we can share with the state of California, I think we make a better case about why there should be legislation for this 6-month delay in the housing elements. So I think I will wrap it up with that. I think I'm happy to answer any questions about the housing incentive program, and I'm sure you're all interested in the housing element due date requirements as well. So with that, I'll turn it back to the chair to open up for public comment and member comment.
Okay, thank you, Seth. I appreciate that information. So as is typical, did we have any public comment on that item?
If anyone in the meeting, joining the meeting, has a public comment, they can raise their hand at this point, and we will call on you. I'm not seeing any public comment.
Okay, so with that, I do have one other question. It might be for the production crew. So we have navigated everybody over into the section where they are not able to raise their hand. I have had a question regarding if they don't have a functioning camera and they want to provide a comment, how am I going to be able to recognize that they would want to participate? Is there another method that is available to us without them activating their camera?
Chair, this is Kendall at production. They could just call out with their microphone, or they can use the chat function on their control panel and message to us here and the organizers and panelists that they'd like to speak, and I can watch that and let you know if one of them reaches out.
Okay, very good. I appreciate that. So with that bit of information, let me go ahead and open it up to the TWIG members to provide some comments on Seth's feedback relative to the awesome opportunity that we have for funding in the region for housing related items, but more importantly, I think, is the information as it relates to some of the challenges that we are facing relative to meeting the statutory timelines for completing our housing elements. I know that we have had some past discussion on this in previous TWIG meetings, but I think the more concrete information, as Seth had mentioned, that we can provide, the better as it relates to making the case up in Sacramento. So I did hear Seth indicate that if it's not a verbal comment provided today, that we should forward our information to him via email, and perhaps some folks would be more comfortable doing it in that manner, and that would be great. So with that said, I'd like to find out if we can get some commentary on this from the various agencies. So if you could activate your camera and let me know that you would like to provide a comment, that'd be great. And it looks like I've got Joseph Smith from Del Mar.
Joseph, you'll need to unmute your telephone to make a comment if you're using your cell phone. There you go.
All right, great. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I had a couple questions related, Seth, to the, I know that you're still in the early stages, but the housing incentive program specific to the pass-through funds. You know, one pretty straightforward need is funding for CEQA when we get into implementing some of these programs, even if we get our certified housing element through. And so just to put that out there, aside from just technical assistance, just getting help with the environmental piece of some of these programs would be essential, because I know that is something in our city that we definitely felt a hit with our budgets for special projects. And so a lot of that got slashed. That was one question. A second, so the question is that possible? And the second question is, with respect to the housing deadline and your discussions from what you're hearing with the staff, what incentive does the state have to grant a deadline extension? You know, with just all the heavy push on housing, why would it be in their interest to give cities any type of extension otherwise? And what kind of conversations or feedback are you hearing that way? Are they being resistant to that because they want to continue pushing forward with their goals? Aside from just compassion on the fact that, you know, we're all struggling. So I was just curious if there's any other conversation you've had on that.
Sure, and I'll start with your first question. Funding for CEQA would be, I think, something, actually, and as we talk about this, the state's giving us a good amount of leeway. We've had conversations with HCD about what would be eligible for us to fund, and the granting legislation leaves it pretty wide open to anything that can help assist with your streamlining of housing development. So if you're talking about a CEQA document, maybe for a specific plan or a community plan that encourages or basically will streamline the development, that the housing project could tier off of that CEQA document, that's something that's right up and ripe for this program. So it's certainly something that we'll have on our radar screen as a potential funding opportunity for the housing incentive program. Regarding the housing element, you know, the conversations are so early. I think the questions that have been coming up are about, you know, what are the drawbacks for the state for doing this? And I think you know, the state, given the amount of effort that it's made over the last 3 years or so to really start to get more housing development and start to get more housing funding out the door, kind of the last thing that they want to do is pump the brakes on this and say, okay, well, even though, you know, we've got jurisdictions that should be updating their housing element and zoning for new housing, you know, what would be the drawbacks to slowing down on this a little bit? And you know, I think it's a fair question for the state to ask. And when it comes to incentives for the grant deadline, I think they look at a lot of the funding opportunities that are out there. They look at HCD and its role in providing a lot of this technical assistance. And I know some of those documents are that you guys need to update your housing elements are being released a lot slower than I think we would all prefer. But they're really looking at HCD and its role of assisting jurisdictions with their housing element updates as being something that could get us to the grant deadline. Again, there's plenty of pushback on that idea as well. If you don't have staff, you don't have staff. If you can't do public outreach, you know, and you're trying to wait until there's a good opportunity to do it so you can reach your community. There's not much technical assistance that HCD can provide in that realm. So I think they're really trying to suss out what would be the pros and cons of the 6-month delay. Is it something that would set the state back as it pertains to the housing goals that it has? And I think that's kind of where we've left the conversations at this point. And I think there's going to have to be another round of talks about what could be a potential legislative fix in order to keep moving forward. So I hope that answers your question, Joseph. I'll take that. He said yes, thanks. Great.
Okay. Do I have any other takers as far as providing some comment back to Seth? And just as a reminder, you need to unmute and activate your camera. Okay, looks like we've got Kathleen Keenan with the air pollution control that can provide some comments here.
Hi, just real quickly, I'm not in the housing world, so I'm going to let you guys do all of that. But the funding clearinghouse portion sounds like a really helpful thing, and I definitely would support having something like that available. It is really hard to coordinate all of these different incentive programs, and if there's anything that we can do to help with that, or frankly, I would just be using it when we were looking at places to apply. So please do that part. Thanks.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to participate?
Okay, I know some of these discussions can be, you know, you may not want to share your department's budget, but please do send me an email or any information that you have about, you know, issues you're having with your housing element, issues you're having with your staffing, and you know, the success stories are helpful too. I think again, you know, we want to make sure that we're conveying that the region is very serious about addressing its housing needs, that we do want to move forward and start implementing the 6th RHNA cycle housing allocation, and any information that your jurisdiction can provide us would be something that's helpful. So I'll just make that last plea, and that'll be it for me.
All right. Thank you, Seth. And again, would just like to support what you're asking for as far as having the various jurisdictions provide that content back to SANDAG so that they can lobby on our behalf from a regional standpoint regarding some of the constraints that we are facing relative to meeting these timelines, especially in the COVID-19 pandemic. So with that, we'll go ahead and move along to the member communications section of our agenda. And this is the opportunity for anyone to, again, activate their camera and provide some comments back to the group. Do I have any takers on that? Or just as a reminder, if you wanted to provide some information regarding the chat in the chat box, we can do it that way too. Let me switch over to the attendees list. Okay, not seeing anything. Let's go on to agenda item number 6, which is again our opportunity here to provide any comments. Looks like we've got Felix. You are muted, Felix.
Okay. Let me see if you can hear me now.
We can
Yes.
hear you.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, before we move out of item number 5, I wanted to see if there was any update or any additional information regarding the RENA plan and the preparations for tomorrow's hearing.
Sure, and I can address that, Felix. Tomorrow, the board of directors is scheduled to hold a public hearing on the adoption of the final RENA plan. Once the board has made a decision on the adoption of the plan, Sandag's required to submit that plan to HCD, and HCD has 30 days really to review the allocation that we made and basically check to make sure, did we allocate the 171,685 units that we were given by HCD back in 2018. So for all intents and purposes, tomorrow could be really the end of Sandag's portion of the RENA cycle. And I will send the final RENA plan to all of your jurisdictions upon its adoption, along with sending it to HCD, and it will include the final RENA allocation, so those can be the numbers that your jurisdiction should use in your housing elements.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so switching back, thank you. Switching back to, we are on future meeting topics. Let's go ahead and open it up to the TWIG members. If you have any recommendations for future items for us to discuss.
So Karen, I'll jump in. One of the things that we'll be looking at for the August and September meetings will be to focus on the regional plan vision. And that will be really Sandag staff's first presentations as it relates to the 5 big moves and the 2021 update to the regional plan. As of right now, and these dates get moved around a lot, but as of right now, we're scheduled to make our initial announcement on the regional plan vision in early August at a joint meeting of the Regional Planning Committee and Transportation Committees. After that initial announcement has been made, we want to do outreach to the working groups. And we're looking at a couple of different ways to get feedback and get input from the working groups. And one of the ways that we are considering would be to have some joint working group meetings together. And I'll have more information about this as we get some of these dates and ideas solidified. But for example, if we were to talk about the land use and environmental impacts of the regional plan vision, it would be important to have a joint working group meeting of the TWIG and possibly also of the energy working group, maybe the shoreline preservation group, and the environmental mitigation working group. All of these are Sandag working groups that we host. So it could be a potential where we have a joint meeting. And again, we'll try to address the dates of those meetings as soon as we possibly can. And I'll work with the chair to find out what we want to do with the TWIG meetings that we have on the calendar right now for August and September. But I do think it would be a good opportunity for the TWIG to weigh in with some of your counterparts on the regional vision and some of the impacts that it would have on land use and planning.
All right, thank you. Sounds like some good meaty agendas that'll be coming forward in the next couple of months. So that's something to look forward to. Before I move on, any other anything else to offer up for Sandag staff to consider for dockets? And again, I do appreciate everyone's patience. This kind of a new meeting format. There is a little bit of a delay in trying to get the ability to recognize participation. So thank you in that respect. And Seth, I wanted to ask before I get to the closure, I don't believe we did a formal roll call of the various agencies that are here today, and we may have lost a few already. but I'm wondering if that's something that you feel we should do. I see a couple of people that popped on that may not have voted on the minutes, and so I just wanted to pose that to you.
I think that would be helpful. I think we'll have, I've got our intern, Sam Solis, is taking the minutes. So I think he can record all the names of the attendees that we have and that that have been here. And we'll make sure we publish that with the minutes as it goes forward.
Perfect.
Unless
Okay.
you want, if you feel more comfortable with announcements, we can do that. But we could also wrap up the meeting.
No, I think for everyone's sake of time efficiency, we can rely on that. So I appreciate that that method. So, okay, with that, before I call to adjournment, our next meeting is going to be on Thursday, August 13th at 1:15 p.m. So hopefully everybody will be able to join us. And with that, at 2:05, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.